fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds, almost thrown off there. I guess Zoom is doing something new where you've got this female voice in your ear. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Oh, yeah.
Almost freaked me out there. But we're talking about catching inshore slams, really just tight lines in general while on vacation. This is summertime. We're entering the midst of just hot days and travel and fun and family and fishing. And one thing we hear over and over, and we've all been there, is, hey, you know, I'm here. I saw earlier today in the community, there was one, hey, I'm in Jacksonville, and I saw you got to that person really quickly, Courtney. You know, never been here, never fished here. I just want to get some tight lines. I don't have a boat. That's usually the thing that follows it up. And so we got Wyatt, Justin, Courtney, all going to share some stories and really some tips and tactics on how to maximize your time on vacation. So Justin, I'm going to throw it to you because this is your idea. Talk through maybe some of the problems and the obstacles, and then, you know, some of the things that you found to be super helpful when you're on vacation. And I know you have a couple stories too, where you were on vacation in an area that might have a new species that you hadn't really caught before, or maybe hadn't caught in many years. So talk through all that.
Yeah, for sure. We see a lot of questions from everybody in the community and through email and comments on any video post we make about, you know, I'm heading down to an area for vacation with my kids and my family. And I just want to know, like, what do I need to do? What rod and reel do I need to have? What lures should I try to throw? Some people are like, I've never caught a redfish, or I've never caught a snook, and I'm heading down to the beach. So this kind of really stemmed from you guys asking, like, how can we better prepare ourselves to be successful? And I do think that it can be daunting in the beginning, because you think there's so much information that you think you need to learn to be successful. But the reality is that it's about keeping it simple. You definitely can go overboard in trying to dig online and find out tides and wind and season and species and what are they eating. But fortunately, here in Salt Strong, we have a community, and you have all of us, if you're a member, to reach out to and ask specific questions that, you know, can help you be more successful in that time. I mean, just to kind of start it off, I do kind of want to lead in with a story and say, I remember a time when I went down to Sanibel Island for the first time. For those who don't know where that is, that's Southwest Florida. And in the summer months, for a week, my family would rent a condo on the beach. And I'd caught small snook before, like little 18-inch snook off of a dock in, you know, Sebastian area. But I really wanted to catch those big snook on the beach. And I didn't have a boat. I didn't have a kayak. I didn't have any way to get around. And I know Sanibel has a lot of people, and it's probably really pressured. And I just wanted to know, what do I do? Like, can I use my inshore rods and reels? Do I need a beach setup? What lures do I throw? What are they even eating? What do I look for on a beach? And I started just going online. This was, oh my gosh, 12 years ago. I mean, it was a while ago. And, I was looking online trying to find like what to use, and found spoons, X-Wraps, Miradines, and a couple different lures. But really, I was trying to key in on, what are these fish eating? Are they eating pilchards? Are they eating shrimp? And just kind of go from there. And I found that, asking questions locally when I was down there, or reaching out to friends on Facebook, this is before Salt Strong, before a community platform, asking for help, asking people that have been successful. And I found that a lot of people were willing to share their experience with me and help me be successful, because it's about giving and helping others. It's rewarding. So that was, that what I learned in that short period of time is always ask for help. Use resources like the Salt Strong page. Ask questions in the search tool. Email us, and we'll be happy to give you some feedback. I want to let my dog out while we're on this call.
Who let those dogs out?
He wants to join in.
I could not agree more with you, Justin. Honestly, if we ever go on vacation and, we want to definitely get on fish, the first place we stop at is a bait and tackle shop and just start asking questions. What are the fish biting right now? Where are good spots at? And that's one of the first things that we do. And of course, now with the community, it's so easy. You put a question out there. Hey, I'm going, down to Fort Myers this weekend. What can I expect? What should I bring? And within minutes, you have an answer. So that's pretty awesome. But if you are looking specifically for bait and tackle shops, I actually found a super cool app. It's called Bait Finder. And you just put in your location. You can actually drop a pin of exactly where you are, and it pulls up hundreds of bait shops right around. It's super cool. So I always use that as a resource as well.
It's awesome. And speaking of bait, we will talk a little bit about the kind of the must-have lures, because that's obviously a whole lot simpler than having to worry about, especially if you don't have a boat, trying to keep live bait alive. Even shrimp sometimes can be a hassle if you just have like a short amount of time, an hour or so to fish on the beach. And we'll talk about lures as well. Wyatt, what do you got? I know you got some stories, because when you even started with Salt Strong, you were in Tennessee and then moved to North Carolina, a place you never fished before. And then all of a sudden, the next day you're in Texas, it seemed like, in a brand new spot. And in both places, you did not have a boat. And so you were kind of on vacation, and you still managed to catch a lot of fish.
Yeah. So, transitioning to all these different areas. And even when I lived in Tennessee, those were all vacation trips to the coast that I was taking. So I had to really focus in on pre-planning. We're going to talk about all that. I had to focus in on pre-planning. Finding local information is extremely important to, know what the seasonal patterns of fish are, what their current trends are, things like that. But the stuff that we hammer home a lot, if you're not in tune with those things, knowing where to find those resources is really important. So, when I was taking vacation trips, there was probably more research done before the trip, in terms of time spent than I actually got to fish during the trip. So pre-planning is the most important thing that you need to be doing, before you actually get to the water if you want to have success, and knowing what you need to be looking for. There's a lot of questions that, if you're taking a vacation to an area that you've not been to, there's a lot of questions you probably don't even know to ask. Even just going from one type of estuary, for example, some of the inshore waters in the Gulf of Mexico versus the Atlantic coast. Most people don't know the difference in tide swings, and just the tide alone, how that plays an effect on fish is really big. We're going to cover all of that, but I would say that, biggest thing you need to be doing if you're going on vacation is do your research. And we're going to cover all aspects of that. And I'm going to have some pretty interesting stories to share of mistakes I've made because I didn't know what questions to ask. But we're going to dive into all that here soon.
Cool. Well, I'm just going to start off with a tactic, because I get this question a lot too, is, hey, and I'm in a new spot. Let's just assume you're going to be somewhere near the beach. You're clearly on vacation near salt water. And I would just, if I could only pick one thing, it would be a bridge. And I don't know of any city that's on the water that doesn't have some bridge. And if you show me one, I'll show you a pretty sad city. But all cities that you're vacationing in on saltwater are going to have a bridge, if not many bridges. And I'm not talking about like the obvious one that's going over the entire intercoastal or the Skyway. There's so many smaller bridges, that are going from it could be a little barrier island, just something small. And some of those, one, that it's close to either the inlet or a pass in most cases. So you're going to have a lot of fresh moving water. And two, it's structure. There's two things you have to have. And I've done a couple reports there in Placida. There's a couple of different bridges that people drive over all the time and are just absolutely loaded with fish. And I'll take one lure. I would literally just take a slam shady on a 1/4 ounce jig head and, some leader line in case they get broke off in the structure. And I have caught fish 100% of the time, not every single, night, but usually I go out in the evening time after the kids have gone to bed. And if I'm there for 3 nights, 100% of the time I'm catching fish at least 2 out of the 3 nights. I'll have a couple times where I'm getting strikes, but just not landing anything. And I've done that on multiple bridges. And as long as you got moving water and you have, at least a bait that's going to get down in the right water column, you will catch some fish. Obviously, if you want to take it to the next level, get some shrimp. I mean, it's almost impossible not to catch some little snapper, some small grouper, something with live shrimp around a bridge. And once again, every city that you're going to be visiting that has saltwater will have at least one bridge, if not many bridges. So do a little research. You can find them on Google Maps, and sometimes you might have to fish on top of the bridge. The one Insider Report I did there in Placida, you can actually go under the bridge. So it's got a slight causeway. You can fish on a part of the causeway and actually go underneath the bridge as well and just start skipping lures right underneath there and hitting off the pilings. It's absolutely deadly. And so I would say a bridge and or a causeway. Once again, pretty much all cities that you're going to be visiting have some type of causeway that usually leads to a bridge or is part of the bridge, taking you a little bit closer to the beaches. And those are always great places to fish during the summertime. And once again, for me, I'm keeping it super, super simple. We talked about earlier in the call for the team about being minimalist, right? About not having to carry a ton of stuff. I might take 2 rods. Many times it's just 1 rod, a little, fanny pack of new leader and some of my little braid cutting scissors and a couple jig heads and a couple Slam Shady paddle tails, and that's all I need. And so that's my kind of tip, that if I'm going anywhere from Texas to North Carolina, that's what I'm going to be looking for, just to keep it super, super simple.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's funny. The interview video that I did for Salt Strong was filmed at a bridge, and that was from shore to catch speckled trout. You think about the things that we look for most inshore predators. We're looking for areas that have bait, that have good current flow, and that have ambush zones. And a bridge, as we've talked about, is usually situated in pretty close proximity to a pass or an inlet, or even if it's a man-made, waterway. Traditionally, that's going to be between 2 larger bodies of water. So there's going to be good current flow between them, moving bait from one side to the other. And typically what's going to happen is predators will stage themselves down current of whatever that structure may be, whether it's a pier piling, it could be some large broken slab of concrete that was used when the bridge was built. A lot of times there is that's under those bridges or piling down and been rebuilt. Still there?
Oh, yeah, we still got you. I think I knew you having some storms there in Texas, so we lost you for 1 second.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, no, I'm back. Yeah, we're just looking for debris and structure, and typically those predators are going to be staging down current of those. So just kind of knowing which way that current's going to be going is one of the big first steps in positioning, just so that you can present your lures as effectively as possible. And that is another big thing is I typically would not recommend, if you're on vacation, it is so difficult to maintain live bait. You have to go out and get bubblers, things like that. It's so much easier to just have some basic artificial lures. Typically, I'm going to bring 1 or 2 different styles of presentations to cover different columns of depths of water. So, and most of the time you can do it with search baits just by adjusting the jig head. So if I'm just going to, scout a spot, in fact, that trip that I did, that was just done with paddle tails. And when Waiter Dave came down here, we went to a bridge and we just waited next to the bridge and kind of figured out where the current was flowing, what structure was closely related to that bridge. Because a lot of bait is going to relate to those bridges as well. They're getting swept by that current. They're looking for something that they can kind of get out of the way of that flow and get away from predators. And eventually they do get caught up by the current. And that's where those predators are going to stage by and use those ambush zones to get an easy meal. So just understanding how, the dynamics of that specific waterway, that specific bridge, whatever structure it is you're fishing, where the feeding zones are going to occur. We talk a lot about pre-planning with, satellite imagery. You can just trace knowing what the tide's going to be. You can see where the water is going to flow in from that pass or inlet towards that bridge or whatever structure it is you're fishing, and which way it's going to flow out on an outgoing tide. So you can plan to be there at different times, fish one side of the bridge versus the other based on where the current's going to flow. That way you can actually present your bait. So you already have a game plan of where you need to be, what you need to throw, exactly where you need to be standing before you even get there. And having that, game plan is what's going to result in you getting onto some good fish.
Good stuff. Courtney, We're talking about bridges. I want to give you a chance to speak because I'm sure you're going to say another B word, which is beaches. What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think for beaches specifically, when you are doing your pre-trip planning, using Google Maps to find those accesses is going to be crucial. Making sure that you're finding parking because not all of those accesses have parking. So that part of the pre-trip planning, if you're going to beaches specifically, is definitely crucial. If you're renting a beach house and you're just walking out on the beach behind your house, great. But most of the time you're going to need to find an access somewhere. I would say the other biggest thing for beaches would be to have some kind of knowledge of how to read a beach. And kind of what you're looking at, when you're watching the wave action and trying to find the structure to find fish is going to be really key. And if you have at least some knowledge of what you're looking for to try to find a run out, try to find a deep trough, then that's going to put you in a much better position than if you have no idea and you're just blind casting out.
So let's assume that all of our listeners have no idea what to look for. What is a runoff? Boil it down to this, because that is one of the toughest parts. I'm guessing the majority of people that go on vacation are going to some type of beach and they get there and it all looks the same. What are you doing? And we can spend some time on this because it's probably one of the easier ways besides a bridge. I'm partial to that, just because it's kind of hard to mess it up. Where the structure is. Whereas a beach, it all kind of can look the same. So talk about the different terms and exactly what you're looking for, and how do you know when it's like a dead zone where you can look at it and say, what, I wouldn't fish there. I'd go here, and then why? Yeah.
So I actually just did a deep dive into how to read a beach and kind of what all of that structure means and why it's important. So definitely check that out. But I would say the biggest thing that you want to be looking for is wave action. And, when you see the breaking waves don't just break on their own. They're breaking because of the structure that's underneath the water. So when you see a breaking wave, it's because there's a sandbar below it, or it's at the shore. And we call that the shore break. So let's say you're standing on the beach and you're looking straight out. You see a breaking wave, 20 yards to your left, in front of you. And then there's really nothing breaking in between that. And then to the right, there's another breaking wave. If there's breaking wave, smooth water, breaking wave, and then there's a pass, almost the fish highway between the shore break and that first deep trough. That deep trough is where the fish are going to be kind of cruising through. And then you see those two sandbars, and then that middle spot that's smoother, that's a run out. And so when all of that wave energy and that wave action is coming in, all of that water that's coming into the beach has to go back out somewhere. And that's going to be your run out. So when you see that smoother water, that's typically a deeper part of water. When you see the waves and the foam, that's your shallower water. And if the water's clean and clear, then you can also tell by water color, right? So the lighter the color, the less deep the water is, the darker the color, the deeper the water. So I mean, those would be the keys. Finding the deep trough. So, the space right past the shore break. This is typically on a higher tide as well. That is, a deeper color, less foam, no waves. That's your deep trough. Then you've got your sandbar breaking, that we would call that your first bar. And that's where the sandbar is. And it's really great to have bait in, around those sandbars, and then in the deep trough as well. Because when the waves break on the sandbar, it stirs up all that bait. So that's where you want to be.
That's good. So these run-outs.
Mm-hmm. Run out.
How many, like and I'm just trying to, it's tough to say an exact amount of space, but if you're out there just kind of looking and scanning, how many of those are you going to be able to see or be able to maybe walk to? Are you usually going to have one every 100 yards, miles? How many for the newbies going out there saying, all right, I don't even I don't even know. Cause sometimes too, like it's very rare to see like zero waves. It might be a smaller wave, right? Maybe you guys are just lucky in Jacksonville, but I feel like when I go, I'm like, all right, that's kind of the area because the waves are, like that, but it's never just like a completely flat, calm area.
You talking
So
about
how
long the trough is? Like how from shore break to like the first sandbar? You talking about how long it is, like on average, or?
No, I was talking about more about the runouts. Let's just say you had a 10-mile stretch of beach. How many runouts do you have? 1, 2, 50, a million?
That really just depends on the beach. And, one of the biggest things about beaches and beach structure is it changes so much. We could have a big nor'easter and all of those runouts and that really nice deep trough that was there a week ago may not be there this week. And that can literally happen if the winds are right and the currents are ripping, you may lose all that structure. So that's why that's the biggest thing is knowing how to read it so you can go find it and not being afraid to move. Because if you're there and nothing's happening, like you said, Joe, with the dead zone, move because the fish aren't there. The fish move.
I think
you should move too.
Yeah, I would say probably for somebody that's new, probably one of the easiest ways to find a run out is if you go out at low tide and if you're going to a new area, you can very easily go on Smart Fishing Tides, which is a platform that we provide, and you can look and see exactly when low tide's going to be. Check your watch and set a timer. Make sure you get out there at the bottom of low tide. And the easiest way to spot a run out is as you're walking along the beach, that water line is obviously receded. What's usually going to happen when you're walking, close to where the waves are breaking against the shore, you'll look back towards where the high water line was. And Courtney explained this very well in her video. I highly recommend you guys go watch it. When that water line drops out, there's still going to be some water that's in that runoff because it's, basically a trough. If you've ever seen that there's a pool of water that's further up the beach and there's water still running out towards, that shoreline, at low tide, those runoffs are, still there. They're shoreline structure that's like built into the sand. They don't go away when the tide's gone. So you'll very clearly see where water moves into that kind of little cut. And it's these pools that are still standing at low tide. Now, obviously, what you can do is just mark a pin on your map where that was so that when the high tide comes back in and that water is over that hole that, if you're not experienced with reading the water, reading the beach, reading the waves, where it is because you marked it on your map and you can kind of have a good visual cue of exactly where you need to cast to be at the entrance to that runoff or in the hole where all that, that kind of trough dumps into. Because usually what's going to happen is you're going to have this stretch that's, really thin. It's maybe 3-4 feet wide, and it runs out to the water. And then you've got this big open pool that's further up. And a lot of times what happens is those fish will run through that trough and that runoff, and they'll get into that pool and they'll sit there. That's exactly what they look like. Yep, that's it right there. That's exactly what they look like.
Never seen that before.
And so my question
Go at
is,
low tide.
so here's the question I was trying to ask. So at low tide, if I went down to where you fish, how many of those am I going to see within eyesight? Like, is it 10, or am I going to only see like 2 that I could walk to? In general,
that's tough. I mean, in Jacksonville, there are some beaches where we could have a run out every 50 yards or so, which is awesome. But there are some beaches that have no structure at all.
It's like oyster bars.
Crazy.
It's a structure that's, it just happens in some places. It's not predefined or, regional specific. It's just something that happens, where seagrass happens to grow one year. These runoffs and the way that the beach structure happens is just dependent on the weather, and that can change if you get a big storm or things like that. So it's tough to pre-plan runoffs. A lot of times you have to go out and scout. What you can pre-plan is things like points or rocks, which is when I would travel to the coast, the Panhandle, when I lived in Tennessee, I'd go to Port St. Joe, and you can scout rock walls. Rock walls are easily spotted, that structure that doesn't move. And that's a really easy area for a beginner to be on the beach and, go throw some, shrimp near or go throw fish fights, things like that. You can throw lures near those rocks, get on jacks, bluefish, flounder hang around those rocks on the beach, things like that around this time of year. So that is a piece of structure you can easily see by scouting satellite maps. And know that that's always going to be there if you don't want to mess around with walking around at low tide. Maybe you don't have time to do that. It doesn't work out with the family schedule, whatnot. You can scout hard structure like rocks and points that does not move. But a lot of times some of the best fishing is going to be in those runoffs for your pompano, your whiting, those species that a lot of times most people are trying to get on the beach because they do run the beach. They use that, moving structure as where they're going to get their meals, because a lot of times they don't sit around rocks all day. They will take quick pit stops there, but they're generally going to be continuously moving down the beach.
This is better than I could have even thought. Like, I never knew what these runouts were. I mean, anybody, like, this is great. That's what it's all about. It's about talking to other people and networking and using your resources to find information. I've walked many a beach on the west coast of Florida and the Gulf, south of like Crystal River for snook, and it's not as common of a thing as over on the East Coast in Jacksonville, or maybe even further up in the Northeast in Georgia or the Carolinas. Those are things that you guys are like, oh yeah, that's something you look for, and that's excellent information. Like, we wouldn't have known that if we didn't have a community or a place to ask these kind of questions to learn about that before I travel. Now I know if I go to Jacksonville, I'm going to look for something like that. That's awesome. Like, 10 years ago, we didn't have this kind of resource to communicate with people and better ourselves before we go on a trip. So like, I'm super excited. I never knew that existed. When you showed me a picture, I was like, oh, it's like a tidal pool kind of, and the water dips out. Makes perfect sense. Moving water, flushing bait, unique piece of structure, unique, something different than like vast miles of beach. So Joe, like your question, like, how is it universal? Like, is it like that everywhere? I've never seen that on the West Coast. Or
I mean, the Gulf doesn't have the power, and the waves are pretty puny. I mean, you need to have some serious water movement to, like, that's a lot of sand to push. I mean, that's like a lot of power. That's really, really cool. So I love to hear you. We talked about bridges, causeways, beaches. What do you have, like a go-to that you like to, like, I don't know, maybe you're more comfortable with, or your confidence types of spots if you're on vacation or in a new area?
Definitely.
Without a boat.
Yeah, definitely. I will agree that structure and moving water are going to be the two things that I'm looking for. The snook on the beach thing, it can be kind of an exception because they're always moving, and you can just walk and walk and walk and walk and throw lures all day long and catch fish. But if you don't have that type of species, or in that scenario of snook on the beach, and I wanted to go somewhere, I wanted to go to Jupiter or Southeast Florida where there are bridges and there's only a couple intercoastal waterways, and the beach access doesn't have great fishing. I'll look for moving water. I'll look for structure. I do like to find little culverts and places in the backcountry, or places where there is like a small creek, if you will. Like a culvert with moving water, I think, is excellent for any species. And I try to find those inland in like a main intercoastal waterway or a main river. The Indian River on the east coast of Florida runs a long, long way. I'll spend a lot of time and look on Google Maps and look for these little feeder creeks that connect to the Indian River. And then I'll look at what direction is the wind flow. If we're going to have a strong east wind and I'm on the west side, the west like land based side of Florida, then all that wind's going to blow into that little feeder creek. And naturally, there's going to be a lot of mud minnows and mullet and croakers and pinfish that are flushing through that entry point. I'll set up there and I'll try to fish presenting into the wind and drifting a lure back so that it looks like bait fish are entering back into that sanctuary or that little feeder creek. But anywhere that I'll go, if I can find land access to little culverts with moving water, all of your bait's going to stack up there. And Wyatt, you pointed out fish positioning and where these fish position to ambush prey is big. Sometimes they will be down current, and sometimes they'll be up at the beginning point to ambush that bait. But a lot of times if I find a culvert and water's gushing out of it, I won't fish the beginning, the entry side where the water's flowing in. I'll fish the outflow side. And I love using the power prawn on a jig head. I think that just slowly bouncing and yo-yoing a shrimp presentation I mean, shrimp can't fight the current the way that a bait fish can. So it seems like a much easier lure to present that's a little disoriented and swirling around at those moving water points. So if I were to go blind right now and I wanted to have the best chance of getting a trout or a small redfish or even a decent sized snook, like a member that I fished with this past weekend got a monster, like almost 40-inch snook on a slam shady around a little culvert point with moving water. I would look at Google Maps and I would find land access points where you're not on someone's private residence, a public park or an area that I can walk to or safely park and pull off the side of the road. And I'd fish these little culverts with moving water, and I'd use a slam shady on a jig head. A quarter ounce is great. You can move it a little bit faster and bounce around. Or I'd throw a power prawn on a jig head for sure. Those would be the two things that I would have as good presentations and good universal lures to use just about anywhere.
What about you guys? We'll stick to the must-have if you can only take, I don't know, let's just say 3 max in terms of lures. What would you take, Wyatt and Courtney?
Yeah, so I would say that right now, being that it's summertime, most of the fish are going to be foraging on bait fish. Your small, medium-sized bait fish. I really don't think that a paddle tail can be beaten, especially for someone that's on vacation that is trying to cover ground in an area that they haven't been to. Paddle tails are phenomenal search baits. You can cover so much ground so quickly, so effectively. A lot of lures, you got to work them at a certain speed with a certain retrieve to get your maximum chances of a strike. A slow, constant retrieve with a paddle tail or a medium paced retrieve with a paddle tail, if you're just trying to cover a little bit more ground, it is so hard to find a lure that can effectively cover as much ground while still getting the highest percentage of strikes that a paddle tail does. So, you're continuously moving around trying to find out where the pockets of fish are. I see a lot of people that are on vacation, they'll fish one spot for 4 days straight and, they don't know why they're not catching fish. It's just, that spot statistically has not provided for you. So you need to, start expanding your reach so you can start finding data elsewhere. If you start getting bites elsewhere, you're going to start getting more data. You start kind of fishing around there. Think of fishing as a numbers game. You need to continuously be searching new zones until you start getting, your success. So continuously covering areas. I love waiting when I'm in an area that I've not been to because it allows me to, especially if you're on vacation, you don't have a boat. Most of the fish that we're looking for are close to these shallow flats or shallow grass flats, things like that. And those are, 2 feet, 3 feet max in depth. And a lot of times they'll be hanging out on the edges and sometimes they're not as close to the shoreline. So just sticking to a shoreline can kind of limit you. And a lot of people, I think, will say that, changing up your lures is going to help you catch more fish. I'm not even going to say 3 lures. I think you only just need 1, and you need to focus more on being efficient with the area that you're covering. So I'm just going to actually say 1, paddle tail, and make sure that you're still moving around. If you can wade, I would recommend you do that. And you continuously walk and you cover different angles. And don't hit the same angle twice until you start, catching fish or you start getting hits. And then you can slow it down and start mixing up your retrieve. But just constantly retrieving to work different angles, move further up the flat 20, 30 yards and start doing the same thing again. Fan cast and then keep moving, keep finding that structure, moving water, and just kind of dissect those areas with those paddle tails. And you will find fish a lot faster than sitting in one spot, changing between 5, 6 different lures, even 3 different lures, and having to worry about all that. So I'm just going to say 1. I'm just going to need the paddle tail.
Keep it simple. Find the 90-10 zone. Special. Simple.
Yes.
You guys missed that episode. We'll put a link down below to both the Simplifying Specialist and the 90-10 zone. It's so critical. I mean, on the beach, it's these runoffs. Once you can find in some of these bridges, right, you'll find if you make enough cast, there's going to be usually one area, whether it's just deeper, more water's flowing through it, or someone has some old structure down there, or they rebuilt a bridge and there's some old pilings and concrete down there. There's usually going to be a couple. And if you've ever been diving, as you guys know, we go lobstering every single year in the Keys and we hit up a lot of the bridges, and it's amazing that let's just say you have 15 big bridge pilings. It'll be usually 2 maybe one that has like everything, and it's all the structure, and that's where all the fish are. And we'll look up and you'll see people who are fishing. And I was like, you might want to come over here after we finish lobstering because we don't want to get hooked. But it's so eye-opening when you go down there with a mask and you actually see what's down there, and you're like, that piling has literally nothing. And this one piling will have all the fish, all the sharks, everything will be around the one with all the extra structure. It's a little bit deeper, and all the bait will be there. It's really, really fascinating.
Have you ever been superstitious and like looked at pilings and see if somebody marked them or used a little piece of bow or something to, like, when you're looking at a bridge piling, you're like, I wonder which one's the magic one?
Well, down there, they're all numbered, and so you could, hey
man, number 37, it's got all the fish on it.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to give you the one. There's one number that we usually kill it at, but it's now my new lucky number. That's good. Courtney, what about you? You obviously do a lot of beach fishing, so I'm going to assume you're going to say some fish bites.
Yes, of course. But if I were only taking lures, I definitely agree with Wyatt. I would have a Slam Shady with me, but I would also I'd bring a gold or silver spoon for sure.
Pretty universal.
Yeah, bait wise, keeping live bait obviously is hard, but fresh dead shrimp works amazing on the beach, and it's super simple. And then fish bites, 100%.
I like how you said fresh dead shrimp, not frozen shrimp, because there is a difference in the quality.
There is a big difference. Yeah. There is a big difference.
That's cool.
So I'm definitely gonna have to go back because I forgot we were talking about beach fishing as well. I would have to also say a spoon, because most of the fish we're targeting off the beach are very toothy, and I don't want to, even those Z-mans, the mackerel will tear up soft plastics, and spoons, and a lot of times you don't want to be burning through $50-$60 worth of lures, having to go to that tackle shop that's on close to your beach house that you're staying in, and burning through all that. So I would definitely say a hard spoon for all those toothy critters that are out there, the blues, the max, all that stuff that's running here in the summertime for the beach fishing. But if you're inshore, all you need is paddle tail for sure. But that spoon will also work.
This isn't the exact one, but yeah, like the silver spoon was the thing that I caught the most snook on fishing down in Sanibel. And I remember when I was doing my research, I was trying to figure out what to use, thinking I had to use a realistic lure. We talked about this before, thinking like that's the best thing I needed to be successful. And my brother and my dad were like, "No, we got to use a silver spoon. That's what all the guys get the snook on." I was like, "What do you know? You've never caught a snook either." Sure enough, like that was it. 4 out of 5 times, and the biggest snook I've ever caught on the beach, like 41, 42 inches, massive, was on a silver spoon, and in the middle of the daytime too, like that's 3 in the afternoon. So for real, spoon.
For real. So it's the timing brings up one other really important topic. Wyatt touched on it, is smartfishingtides.com. That's, if you're an insider member, you have full access to that. That's critical when you're on vacation because, one, it's obviously going to show you everything you need from the tides to what the wind is doing to now we have sonar in there. So, if you have that spot that maybe you saw on a satellite map, which is also in Smart Fishing Tides, then right below it, you can actually go see the depth and say, oh yeah, that is a little hole down there. This is a little bit deeper. Maybe there is something unique here. And so it's basically has every tool that you possibly need at Smart Fishing Tides. Once again, for our members to just to give you an advantage over the fish and ultimately just tell you the best time, right? Because when you're on vacation, I'm assuming you're there with someone else. Most people don't go vacation completely by themselves. And you're going to be spending time with those other people, whether it be boyfriends, girlfriends, wives, kids, family, whatever, your family reunion. And so, it's also important that the day before, the week before, whatever, that you're scheduling out your time. Like I said, for me, it's at nighttime a lot, which is a great time to go, by the way, on vacation. Or super in the morning, or early in the morning, especially on the beaches. There are some areas where they're not overbuilt, but in Florida here, it's very few and far between. And if you try to go out there at 10 in the morning or even 9 sometimes, you've already missed your chance. You've got all kinds of chaos and it gets just really, really, really tough the longer the day goes. So I would say start super early if you're on vacation and then knock it out. And then you get to go spend the rest of the time with your family, whoever you're with, or in the evening is a great time to do it. But that Smart Fishing Tides is a game changer. And anytime on vacation, that's what we have up. And of course, it tells you what the strike score, if you guys aren't familiar with that, it's a really a number, like a grade, if you will, from one being the worst, 10 being the best, to tell you, hey, this is going to be a really good day. And then it even breaks it down in each day by time period. So it'll tell you, hey, at 6 o'clock from 6 to 7 is going to be your best chance to go out there and get some tight lines based on, the moon activity and the wind and, like 15 other things that make up the secret KFC recipe for Smart Fishing Tide. So definitely use that. If you're not a member, what the heck are you waiting on? If you like this stuff, this is our free stuff. This is the stuff we put out there just because we're a little bit bored sometimes. And obviously I'm kidding. We're big believers in just giving as much as we can. And then, knowing that we reserve the very, very best stuff and just our time to our insider members. That's where we're actually putting all of our own personal insider reports. We're now doing these live coaching calls every single Thursday. And then on Friday, every single week, 52 weeks out of the year, Luke is getting on satellite maps in 10 minutes or less and just going through, kind of curating all of the trends that are happening inside our community and really just trying to boil down a week's worth of information into 10 minutes to tell you exactly where you should go fish. It takes all the guesswork out of it. It just gives you one more edge over the fish and your fishing buddies. And I mean, there's nothing better than coming home to the family with just a phone chock full of fish pics, and nothing worse than going back and your head hung low and saying you got skunked because you didn't know what a run out was, like Justin and I did.
all the wasted trips, guys.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm gonna look for that.
Yeah, man, it's funny. People go on vacation, they want to spend time with their families, and a lot of times it's a good chance for people to introduce their kids to fishing as a sport. And it's tough to get kids hooked if they're not having fun. And there's things you can do with certain baits to make it fun and whatnot. But ultimately, helping a kid land a fish is what's really going to keep them hooked. So you need to do your research if you want to be successful. And like we've talked about, it's not just showing up to a spot or showing up to a random part of the beach and throwing out one of those big chunky metal rigs that's got some shrimp on it. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. 90% of the time, it's going to be based on, picking the right spots. There's a very small percentage where it does actually come down to, the right lure and presentation. But most of the time, it's just about picking the right type of spots, the right time of day, right tides, things like that. That's all stuff that we share in the community and, just in the Insider Club in general. We've got all these courses that literally will have you set up and ready to rock and roll, by the time you hit the beach. So highly recommend you guys get it. It's probably the best thing you can do for your fishing game. It's going to help you and your family catch more fish without a doubt.
Love it. Guys, anything else? Super helpful. I think we'd all love any and all feedback. If there's anything that we missed, if you're going to some crazy place, I don't know that this is going to work in beaches of Croatia, but it probably will. It's been really cool, because we own Slam Shady, and Z-Man licenses it from us, and now Slam Shady is, because Z-Man's worldwide now, they have now taken our Slam Shady color to India, because India has their own Z-Man Instagram account, and Australia and some other random, Japan, and now we're getting tagged in some of these cool fish pics from other countries, which is pretty awesome. So Slam Shady is universal, officially worldwide. But yeah, definitely leave us some feedback on any specific places you're traveling. And of course, if you're an insider member, get on these Thursday calls. There are many weeks where we're going to break down an exact area, and it could be yours. So get on there, ask questions, and that's every Thursday at 4:00. We do a Zoom call just like this. Hundreds of people usually join. A lot of fun. And then, of course, every Friday, Luke boils down in 10 minutes or less, like literally shows you the type of spots you should be go fishing to catch inshore slams from Texas all the way up to North Carolina, really Virginia, and everywhere in between, and talks about what's working in terms of what lures or live bait, etc. So join us there. If you haven't already, saltstrong.com, you'll see a place to join the Insider Club. You get more access to all of us, our other fishing coaches. I know Luke and Tony and Andy and Austin couldn't make it. They're all out filming some content for our members. But we've got such a cool crew. It's so much fun. And that's why we got 22,000, members. And we were looking, so many of our members who joined when we first started this a little over 5 years ago, they're still here. The majority of people that started 5 years ago are still in the club today, which is really cool. So we're trying to think of some cool 5-year gifts for our 5-year members. And also, speaking of anniversaries, Wyatt, you mentioned it earlier in the call that you did your interview video. We basically challenged Wyatt, because we weren't even we didn't even have a job opening. Wyatt just kind of created his own, and we're like, all right, we'll go film a video and see what you do. And that was 2 years ago today. So happy anniversary.
Yep. Took a vacation trip like the ones we were talking about. I watched all the courses and everything and picked out that bridge. And man, I was lucky to find this trout that day. Otherwise, I might not be sitting here. But all came down to pre-planning and the stuff that we teach in the Insider Club. So here I am, living proof that it works.
You've come a long way, my friend.
Yes.
Do you remember? You remember, like, it was like. It wasn't a really dinky trout, but it was barely a keeper. And you're like, it's a gator trout. I'm like, it's not a gator trout. So funny going back and looking at our first videos.
I was just pumped up, man. You can't be bringing that up. We edited that out, so it's not in existence anymore. Nobody heard that. Erase that from your memory. Did not call that 12-inch trout a gator. Definitely.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure you did. Just like some of our first videos that are out there. Oh man. If you guys want to go back and look at them, go into YouTube and you can sort it by oldest. And there's some pretty bad ones.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah. And Luke looks like a 12-year-old boy. So funny. Well, guys, we really appreciate you. This has been a fun one. And like I said, hit us up with questions at saltstrong.com. In the fishing tip section, we'll have this along with all the other content that we are putting out there available. And at the bottom, you'll see a place to leave a comment. It comes right to us. Versus YouTube, you're more than welcome to leave a comment on YouTube, but we found it's really tough to get to those, and we always try to give precedence, the whole equitable not equal, to anyone who goes to the site at saltstrong.com and leaves comments there, because it also tells us if you're a member or not. So if you're a member, guess what? You get your questions answered before non-members. So that's just another way of saying thank you guys so much. We also have some new tackle coming up, some new lures that we're working on. And of course, members will get priority access before everybody else. So got some really cool stuff coming here in the summertime. That is it, guys. We appreciate you. Come join us in the Insider Club at saltstrong.com. To you current Insider members, thank you guys so mumuch. You rock. You're the foundation of the company. And I can't wait to see you guys on the next episode. We out. Peace.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.